Welcome to the Tilted Halo. This is a new podcast, and it's for anybody who's a woman in ministry. You might be a pastor like myself, a bishop, a priest, a rabbi, music minister, elder, children's minister, whatever your title is. You're absolutely in the right place, especially if you're someone who loves your ministry and you're doing it well and you're feeling pressure to sometimes be perfect, and deep down inside, you know you're not. And how in the world to deal with that? And men, you're absolutely welcome here too, because this is about ministry and the same thing can happen to you. So you're all in the right place. Let's get started with the show. Technology is a wonderful gift. It's made possible this podcast. It makes possible the radio show I used to do. It makes possible websites and getting information to people electronically. It makes possible live streaming worship services and all kinds of different things. So technology is a wonderful gift. But there's some things we need to think about as we use that within a faith community. You've probably heard of something called algorithms. Those are the ways in which on social networks, it gets decided what we see. Now, I don't know how many friends you have on Facebook or connections on LinkedIn and things like that, but you probably notice that you see things from mostly the same people over and over again. And unless you go to somebody else's site specifically to see what they're saying, somebody you haven't heard from for quite a while, you probably won't see that because the algorithms have a bias in them, which is they will show us more of the same sorts of things we've already been seeing. So you click on somebody's post that's about a certain topic, you'll see more things about that topic and more things from that person. That's just the way those things function, because it's like, okay, this is what somebody's interested in. We'll feed them more of that. That's nice, but it also begins to limit what it is we're going to see. There is a wonderful book out called Christian Ethics for a Digital Society by Kate Ott. It was published in 2019, so it's not very old, although technology is continuing to evolve at a pretty rapid pace. And I believe it's available on Amazon and possibly also Barnes and Noble, thinking about technology and being able to get things. But she talks about in that book about the story of the Tower of Babel or Babel, however you wish to pronounce it, as the idea of it being a human effort to erase differences. And social media has a similar quality to that. And what God did with that was to destroy that tower so that to proliferate differences. Differences are good. I mean, look at any forest. There are different varieties of trees in there. I've talked about that before. Look at, go to a zoo or different parts of the world, and there are different animals there, different kinds of birds that are around in any country and any community. And it's a good thing because each species has a place and a purpose. And we need to remember that. And so the differences between us and the differences in how we think and how we do things, those are important things that God celebrates, and it helps our whole society so that we don't become so narrowly focused that we can't deal with new things. So racial segregation is perpetuated by most social media networks. So we need to be conscious of that when we do things online and when we talk about having kids online. But one of the ethical questions is, how do we use this technology? What are we putting out there? If you use technology as a way of sharing things from a worship service and it involves children, um, there are things to be concerned about with that, because there are ways that people could find out who these children are and target them for different things and don't want that. Um, Posting things about youth gatherings and youth meetings and things like that. It's great to do that, to show the things that are happening within your faith community. But there's also the need to be careful with some of those things. When we use social media, we become data and have a digital, and by definition, that means limited identity on social media. And others can share that and even manipulate that. So anything that's put out on social media, like this podcast, somebody can share it. Wonderful, great. I love to have you share my podcast. But to do it in a way that is ethical and not manipulative. So if you're going to share the podcast, please share all of it instead of just one segment where you say, I totally disagree with this part. If we can pick and choose things and not get the context that's there. And when that happens, it leads to misunderstandings. It leads to all kinds of problems within how we treat each other. So sharing bits and pieces, tiny little wedge slices of something on social media, an outtake from something can be very misleading about the whole topic of what's being discussed. And you may receive from somebody else such an outtake, such a slice, a blip of something from somebody. And just realize when you do, and you see those kinds of things, that that's just one couple of seconds, perhaps, of what that person was saying. And the whole picture can be much different. The whole concept of what the person is talking about might be the opposite of what you're seeing, in the extreme case. So be careful when you watch things as to what you think. Check it out. But also when you post things, know the danger that's there, that it can be manipulated and used. Digital communication has the possibility to reach much farther. I know that some of the things that I have communicated digitally in previous things that I've been doing have reached at least 25 countries. That's amazing. I never expected my voice to be heard in that many countries around the world, at least that many. And, I'm hoping that maybe this podcast will get a good reach too. But the idea is that as wide as it can be, get out there, it means it could also be widely misunderstood and misused. The impact of forgive and forget. We need to remember that with social media and digital things as well. Since data can be archived for a person or a company, anything that's put out there that might be hurtful or somebody might misuse or misunderstand, it's going to stay there. So how do we forgive and go on and forget if somebody keeps bringing this stuff up? Retrieving these archives, reposting and reposting and reposting. How do we practice that part of our faith that's about forgiveness and moving on when a hurtful piece keeps coming up. That's a problem and something we really need to look at and challenge. And then we're coming up with now something brand new that's really taking off by storm since the beginning of 2023. And that is something called AI, artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence can be a wonderful gift, just like anything else with media and technology. It can help us go through reams of material and come to a summary of something. It can summarize this podcast in seconds and come up with the basic points of the podcast. That can be very useful. But it can also, who knows where this is going to go? It has the possibility to start creating some things, and it can quickly download a sermon, a podcast, a blog post, and everything that a person says, and you can kind of get a perspective on where that person is. But if that's how we constantly see the person, then we grow. Hopefully we all grow and have the possibility of saying at some point, I said this back then and my perspective has changed. Well, if AI has us cataloged as one particular way of understanding things, and all of a sudden our perspective changes, it's like pouring us into concrete that's the way we're always going to be. So as you think about using technology, look at all the possibilities with it, the wonderful gifts that it brings, the way to share the message of God's love in a much broader perspective. And that's wonderful. It's great. And, that message can get to people who would never, ever hear it otherwise. But it also creates questions. As you look at social media and as you see something out there, is it true? Is what you're reading and seeing true? And this applies to politics, it applies to faith, it applies to what somebody has said. Even if it's a friend of yours. Is that really true? Or is it a sliced and diced piece of something that somebody else puts together and manipulates for their own purposes? And, the images that are out there too. You put up a picture, you put up an image of something, it's going to live there a long time. Be careful. Is that really what you want to put out there? Yeah, maybe fun at the moment, but 10 years from now, is that fun? Is it what you want a prospective employer to see? That's another question. Is it what you want a prospective congregation to see? That's a question too. Is it what you want future family members to see or your current family members to see? All of those are difficult questions and things to think about before you go posting some of those fun, crazy, enjoyable times. And we have those. We like to share that with our friends as kids and even as young adults and as adults. But, is social media the appropriate place for that? Are there other ways to share it privately? If that's what it's about, something private in relationship. Or do you really want it out there for everybody else to see? Do you want the things from your congregation out there for everybody to see? There might be some wonderful things to share out there. Yes, do it. But also be careful. Think about that as you do these things. So that's, as I use this wonderful media here and enjoy it, I am aware of some of those issues too. and just ask that you be aware of it as you go forward in thinking about how your faith community can properly use all of this wonderful new technology. And quite frankly, folks, it's going to get, the changes are not going to slow down. And it's just going to keep accelerating. From everything I have read and learned, the rate of change for some of these things, it's like a rocket ship that's just starting to take off. So buckle up and learn what you need to. Enjoy the ride in a sense, but also be careful and use this technology as best you can to the glory of God and out of love and care for one another. So from the Tilted Halo, God's peace and blessings to each of you until we meet again. You have been listening to Tilted Halo with me, Kathleen Panning. What did you think about this episode? I'd really like to hear from you. Leave me some comments. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this episode. And catch another upcoming episode for more conversation on ministry, life, mindset, and a whole lot more. Go to www.tiltedhalohelp.com, where I've got a resource guide and other resources waiting for you. And be sure to say hi to me, Kathleen Panning, on LinkedIn. See you on the next episode.